Welcome to Northwest Aerospace News Live. I am Jennifer Ferrero, a writer for the magazine and your host. In today's episode, we are talking with Kelly Hennig, Chief Operations Officer of Stoke Space. They're making reusable rockets to carry satellites into space. They are profiled in the April-May issue of the magazine. Let's welcome today's guest, Kelly. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Kelly, thank you for coming on the show. I enjoyed interviewing you recently, and we look forward to learning more about Stoke Space, your first planned missions, and how you differentiate yourself in the market with reusable rockets. Kelly, I understand Stoke Space offers an innovation not yet seen in this industry. From a big picture perspective, what does it mean to design and build reusable rockets?
Reusability, it's not something that you can necessarily just slap on at the end of your design phase or something that you can add on after you've already done a couple of missions. Reusability is a mindset. It's something you have to start with. It's something that you have to design to. And every single design decision has to be examined and parts picked to maximize reusability. Reusability, I think of it as a little bit of a more trendy word than, say, reliability, but it's very similar. You want to design your parts and your overall vehicle to maximize its reliability and its useful life. It's very similar to cars, say. You think about a very reliable car, being able to drive with it miles and miles and miles with minimum breakdowns or other things like that, just with regularly scheduled maintenance. So we're essentially taking that similar type of mindset and designing reusability into our vehicle from the very start.
What brought you to the company, and how would you describe the culture of Stoke?
Oh, I love this question because I am a huge fan of the culture that currently exists. It is awesome here. I have spent most of my years at very large aerospace and defense corporations, very large companies that tended to move a lot slower, and they had good reason to, given what they were designing and building. However, I was really intrigued by how fast and innovative Stoke was, and how everybody had such clear ownership and mission and drive, and we're just moving at a phenomenal pace to execute and make the company successful.
Great. Tell me about your testing facility at Moses Lake, Washington. What goes on there, and why did you choose that location?
I would like to say that lots of booms go on there because we do all of our energetic testing there. But we test all of our components, our pre-burners, our engines themselves, our stages, all of our testing occurs there. And we are kind of regularly running through those paces. We're also going to do a hop there, which is a test of our stage 2. It's going to do a vertical launch and then a vertical landing. It's just going to be a short kind of up and down kind of demonstration, but it's going to show out our capability for integrating the heat shield as well as being able to land our second stage. We picked this because it's only a 3-hour drive from our design and manufacturing facility, and having those three so closely coupled together is essential in moving fast. We could be testing parts out in Moses Lake, run into an issue, have something designed and made and brought over to the test facility in only a couple of hours. And that allows us to really iterate incredibly fast and execute.
And that goes back to what you were talking about, is how rapidly you can innovate because it's a smaller company, you're more nimble, so that helps with that explanation. Fantastic. All right, well, what services will Stoke provide, and when will your first missions begin?
So we're going to launch in 2025, and we are delivering satellites and other cargo to space. So we're developing routine access where we can drop off our payloads at any designated orbit, right to where they need to be. Again, as soon as we launch in 2025, we're going to ramp up our cadence and provide that service to anybody who needs something dropped off.
And is there a market for that right now, or is that market still in development?
I would say it's a little bit both. There is absolutely a market for it right now. I would say launch access and access to space is a little bit of a limiter for the space economy right now. And so there is a large need for it, but the need will continue to grow. And so we'll see a lot of innovative companies are limited by their access and to space and being able to do it at a low cost and routinely. And so providing that type of service to customers really unlocks a number of different opportunities for them.
Kelly, now just as a follow-up question, is everybody at Stoke Space essentially a rocket scientist?
No, I am not a rocket scientist, certainly. My degree is in electrical engineering, and I worked on electronics and sensors. And of course, we have our avionics team, which works on electronics. And then we have a lot of just support functions as well. So a large majority of them are rocket scientists, but there are plenty of other folks here as well who we need and whose expertise we rely on.
Okay, and as a follow-up to that, then, is Stoke Space actively hiring?
Yes, we are actively hiring, and we're always looking for phenomenal talent. And I would say even if you don't necessarily see a job description for your particular skill set, we always have an option called a superhuman. And a superhuman are for folks who are very passionate about what we're doing and who want to join the team and who have a skill set that we haven't quite identified yet, but would be a huge asset to our team.
That sounds really exciting, and it's a whole new industry, so I can see why you have more of that general superhuman description as a job description, because you never know who you're going to get.
Yes.
Well, I'd like to know more about how the rockets will be programmed to navigate both to the payload destination and then back to the launch pad on Earth. And you did explain this to me during our interview for the magazine article, but I'd love to go over that again.
Sure. We have a number of different pieces of instrumentation on the rockets and in the avionics suite that allows the rocket to sense where it's at and understand its direction, its how it's moving, all of these other pieces of telemetry that go into it essentially understanding where it needs to go and then to deliver itself back. Of course, there's a certain amount of I would say oversight that we provide as well, but in general, it's using very similar type of I would say pieces of hardware and electronics that you see in other things that can make those types of decisions, whether it be cars or aircraft or all of these other types of similar vehicles.
It sounds like a big innovation, as I said, because it doesn't sound like anyone else is doing this right now. Is that correct?
Well, the avionics, I would say other people are doing that. And so that is not necessarily hugely innovative. I would say it's been done before. We're working on the details ourselves, but not necessarily that. However, I would say the reusability for the second stage is something that nobody has done as of yet or demonstrated as of yet. And our approach to it with the integrated heat shield and our particular engine is incredibly innovative. And so that approach is something we haven't seen before. And it's solving a number of very hard challenges. Nothing that's, developing new types of physics, but definitely solving hard problems.
Okay, and I do have another follow-up question before we get into talking about sustainable fuels. I'd like to know a little bit more about that heat shield, because if I remember correctly, that's also something that's new to market. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. It is very new. So what would you like to know about it?
Well, how is it different from other heat shields that have gone on other rockets?
Absolutely, sure. First of all, it is a regeneratively cooled heat shield. So in the combustion chambers of rockets, you have a method of cooling them because they get to extreme temperatures is to actually flow very, very cold fuel through channels and to actively cool them. And so our founders, Tom and Andy, had realized that the temperatures inside the combustion chamber were actually going to be much more extreme than those that would hit the surface on reentry. And so they came up with a concept which actually had been thought about previously, much earlier, but nobody had demonstrated. And so they took that approach to actively cool the heat shield by flowing the fuel through it, and then utilizing that as part of the overall engine cycle, which is an expander cycle, and using that to to protect the vehicle during reentry. And so all of that. It goes back to what I said about designing for reusability. In this particular case, they knew that they needed to reuse this and they needed to integrate the engine into the heat shield itself and make it kind of one unit. And so this is the approach that they took in order to, create that very close integration and to make them all to work together.
Can you please speak to the sustainable fuels you're using and how that differs from other rocket providers?
Sure. So a lot of rockets have things like solid boosters, which can be incredibly problematic. They have a lot of I would say, soot and other types of debris and particulates that come out. And so they're not particularly good for the environment or in general just for use. And then you have other rockets that are using something called RP1, which again is very sooty and is not necessarily great for the environment. And so for our particular rocket, we've chosen for this first stage to use methane, natural gas, which is much less polluting than those types of options. And then for our second stage, we're using hydrogen and oxygen, which of course turns into water when it's consumed. And we've chosen those both because of their sustainability as well as for their performance and the efficiencies that they give to our engines.
Kelly, thank you so much for coming to the show today.
You're very welcome. This has been fun. Thank you.
Well, if you're interested in learning more about Stoke Space, check out www.stokespace.com And until next time, keep engaging with the manufacturing and aerospace news you need to know in the Northwest with Northwest Aerospace News Magazine. Goodbye.